family, and friends, we are going to begin the funeral service for Mr. Sal Schreiber. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it into silent mode at this time or turn it completely off. I'd also like to welcome everybody via live stream. On behalf of the family, thank you. Services will be conducted by Rabbi Barry Schechter of Congregation Kol Emmett in Skokie.
Mismole David, Adonai, mi Yaakov Yolecha, mi Ishkon behar kodshecha, Olech tamim, ufohelet tzedek, v'dover emet bilevavo. Lo ragal al shono, lo asaler yeura, vecher palon asa kerovo. Nivze beinav nimas, yetirei Adonai yechabed, nishbalara velo yamir. Gospel lo natan ben Eshech, v'shochad anakil olakach. O seyehle lo yimot li'olam. God, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain, those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. Dear friends, we're here for a sad and difficult occasion. To say goodbye, which is one of the most difficult things that we can ever do, but also to pay tribute and to honor the memory, and even if possible, to celebrate the life of Saul Schreiber, the son of Ethel and Frank, Betzalel ben Ephraim in Hebrew, who leaves behind a family and friends who really loved him very, very dearly. First, of course, I should mention his life's partner, his life's love, Esther, to whom he was married for 67 years. But we have here the children, the sons, Craig and his Tiffany and Neil and his Susan. I know some people can't be here, but they are with us. Where am I looking at? Where's the, oh, it's somewhere here anyway. So I'm welcoming everyone who couldn't be here. As I said, Craig and his Tiffany, and Neil and his Susan, and grandchildren, Bradley, Jeremy and his Dahlia, Jessica and her Yaakov, Joyce, Dennis, Ryan, Virgil, Soleil, and Phoebe, and great-grandchildren, Lucas, Emma, Nora, Yael, and Aya. I think I saw one of them yesterday when we were talking. Who did I see? Yael. I greet you again, Yael, and I greet all the others as well. And I should also mention his dear late sister, Evelyn, to whom he was so very, very close. And their nephews, I think Richard and Ira, that you told me about, who were also very close. So this is the family, and we're going to begin by hearing from the family. So Neil, if you would like to come and speak to us about your dad. Things get hairy, just, sorry? If things get hairy, just take a breath.
See if I can do this. First, I want to thank everybody for being here for my dad and for all the support and friendship that we've shared over the years, and particularly over the last several months. These were hard months for us and for my dad, but it was made a lot easier with all the thoughts, prayers, and friendship that we received. Family and friends were very important to my dad. Throughout his life, he was always there for people. He and my mom were at every event and function for me growing up, and they were always there for all our family, our whole lives. My dad had a way about him that caused people to like him. He was the big man on campus at the Carriage Club where he lived for the last 5 or 6 years. People would come up to me all the time and tell me how much they liked my dad, what a good guy he was. He knew everybody there. He was involved in everything. The staff at Carriage Club over the years, and particularly in the last few months, were incredible to him, and soon I can't thank them enough. My dad's main theme in his life was helping people. First evidence of that was his service to the country in World War II. He was very proud of that, and we were very proud of it too. And the Navy is going to be here today to honor him, and we're amazed at that. In his work life, he was in the insurance business, which is also a business that really was dedicated to helping people. And he loved doing it. The agents that he hired into his firm, many of them were veterans, had disabilities themselves. We got to know them all the time. We visited them on holidays. There was one man that I remember particularly. His name was Hank. He had lost the use of his legs. He was in a wheelchair. And I must have been very little, because to me he was the strongest man in the world. He lifted me up with like one arm over his head. My dad was Mr. Fix-It for everyone. Most of our family couldn't tell you the difference between a Phillips screwdriver and a blade screwdriver, but my dad would always show up to fix whatever he needed. For my grandparents, he was there, did everything for them, was really like a son to them, taught us a lot of good lessons about family and being there for family. But the person who my mom or my dad took care of the most was my mom. My dad had a great love for my mom and was devastated when she passed. I know the first thing my mom is saying right now is, "Sal, what took you so long?" In recent months, he really took great joy in seeing and hearing from our close family. I know Jessica would have been with him by his side if she could be, but she often visited, maybe daily, if not weekly, in video, and he loved seeing her. Jeremy's recent visit to us with Yal was just lit my dad up. It was beautiful to see. He loved his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. And Jeremy and Dahlia had an incredible relationship with my parents before they moved to Chicago. They were very close. They went to dinner all the time. My parents loved being with them. In the last couple of weeks, we had a wonderful visit from my niece and nephew from Holland, Joyce and Dennis. They got here a little too late for my dad to realize that they were here, but I know he knew that they were there, and he really appreciated it, and they were tremendous help to us through some tough times in the last couple of weeks. Brad has been an amazing son. He was here with Lucas in the last couple of months. Lucas is 10 years old, incredibly mature young man for 10 years old. I know it was very difficult for him to see my dad in the state that he was in, but it was a wonderful experience for Lucas and for my dad. He's an incredible young man, and he's learned compassion and empathy from his father, and it's wonderful to see. Brad's help to us was invaluable. He was with my dad constantly, took him for long walks around the carriage club where he lived, was there for him hours on end, and I really thank you, Brad, for being there for us. Finally, I want to talk about a very special person to me and my dad. That's my wife, Sue. She wasn't just a daughter-in-law. She was a daughter in every way possible to my dad. For those of us that know both of us, you won't be surprised that most of the people that met us thought she was the daughter and I was the son-in-law. Sue can't be here today. She's battling with COVID, as we all have been. But I know she really wants to be here, and we would have loved to have her here. But my dad knows how much he meant to her. Sue's the very best person I know ever in life. And my dad and I are very lucky to have her. Thank you. I love you, Sue. Dad, rest in peace. You deserve it.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil, for those heartfelt, heartwarming words. And now, Brad is going to speak to us.
So I sat down with my siblings, my brother Jeremy and his wife Dahlia, my sister Jessica and her husband Yaakov, and we just reminisced for a while. And I wrote down a few of the things that we discussed because it was just the epitome of who my grandparents were, who my grandpa was. As Jeremy said, Grandma and Grandpa just absolutely nailed it as grandparents, and as a unit. They were there for everything for us. They were so involved in our lives. I don't recall a weekend not seeing them. I don't recall a weekend not asking to sleep over at their house. I don't recall a weekend not going somewhere with them on some adventure or exploring their house or just being around them. Whether it was a baseball game, a soccer game, a wrestling meet, a dance recital, a graduation, it didn't matter. They were there. When we knew they were coming, the three of us would excitedly wait, hoping upon hope that they would be driving Grandpa's convertible. All we ever wanted to do was ride in that convertible, that cherry red Buick GS 455. Whether or not they drove in the convertible or their Volvo, several iterations of, Going back to their house was an adventure. It was amazing. Grandpa was meticulous about everything. Everything. Everything had a place. Everything had a purpose. I remember going into Grandpa's office and knowing absolutely certainly that his office had not changed since 1962. We would find everything. Grandpa did not throw out anything. Anything. We would find ancient volumes of the Sears catalog with guns for sale for $10. It was like a trip through time going into Grandma and Grandpa's house. We would spend hours with Grandpa in the basement where he would teach us the intricacies of using English to spin a ping pong ball. It was during that time, playing ping pong with Grandpa, that we realized that Grandpa's workshop in the back of the basement was equally the most fascinating place in their house and terrifying. Nobody knew what was living back there. Jessica was certain that somebody was going to jump out of the shower and grab her at any time if she went back there. I have nothing but amazing memories in that house. Grandma being very concerned that we were running around with our socks on. She thought we would fall and hit our head on the marble floor. Grandpa making sure that we weren't wasting any water and that the sink was off, or we had turned off the lights. Grandpa was actually known the world over for his home entertainment system. I'm not sure everybody knows this, but he might have had 15 remotes, and they were all required to turn on the system, which essentially meant that Grandpa was the only one that knew how to use his TV. We would spend hours watching Superman movies, Christopher Reeve Superman movies, or Crocodile Dundee. Grandpa would replay the scenes that he liked on slow motion, showing us how Crocodile Dundee killed a snake with his bare hands. And Grandma telling him, "Sal, just watch the movie." Grandpa was the most patient and generous person that I think I ever knew. Well, generous to me. He was the worst tipper I'd ever met in my life. Watching Grandpa with Grandma, especially as they got older, and listening to Grandma say things like, "A murderer has a shorter sentence." Seeing Grandpa take it in stride was always the way that I thought that marriage should work. He taught me things about being an adult that I didn't even know he was teaching me. He taught me how to just be a good person and how to love your family and love your friends. Grandpa taught me how to drive in his convertible. He let me take it out at 15 years old. I don't know what he was thinking about. He wanted me to learn the brakes because they were different. Grandpa let everybody take the convertible to prom. My dad took the convertible to prom. Jeremy took the convertible to prom. I took the convertible to prom. Jessica lost out because her boyfriend was terrible. I'm sure our dates loved it. I'm almost positive it was the highlight of their evenings. Dahlia tells a story of Grandpa when she had first moved to Chicago. She was here for several years, and she just wasn't good at driving in the snow, being from Florida. During a snowstorm, she skidded off the road on Peterson. At 90 years old, Grandpa didn't even hesitate. He left the house, got in his car, and picked her up. And that's the kind of man he was. And that's the kind of man he taught us to be. Eventually, his love for technology did get away from him slightly. When Jessica and Yaakov taught him about Netflix, they left it on, and he watched that evening. And the next morning, He told them that he watched the longest movie he had ever seen. He just couldn't make it through the entire thing. It was hours long. He fell asleep. And when they looked, they realized that he had binged House of Cards. Grandpa was and is and will always be the reason that I love to tinker. He taught my dad taught me, and we all did it together. I miss you, Grandpa. I love you. I'm so happy that you got to meet so many of your great-grandchildren. Thank you.
We've heard these two beautiful, I was going to say memoirs, but they're more than that, or reminiscences, which those two words are too weak. We have a saying in Hebrew, Devarim hayotzim min halev, words that come from the heart, nichnasim el halev, enter the heart. And when you hear from a child and a grandchild, first of all, when I have a grandchild, I never had any grandparents to speak of. But the blessing you had to have grandparents, a grandfather and a grandmother, of course, to the grandfather today, who was so wonderful. You said a sort of ideal grandparents. What a joy you had. What a blessing. And when you told me about how you mentioned, his work, his being in the Navy, you didn't mention. You mentioned it to me that he actually lied about his age. He said he was older than he was because otherwise they wouldn't have taken him. And when I heard that, I thought, what a wonderful example. Someone who is, for whatever reason, but he's a patriot and he wants to serve his country. And by the way, in World War II, there are discussions about what is a just war. If ever there was a just war in the history of the world, it was World War II. And he played his part in that. And it wasn't that long, but it affected him for the rest of his life. It was a signal experience for him, of which he was justly proud and for which he was honored. And that's a very, very important part of his life. As you told me, he was born in New York, in the Bronx, and he came to Chicago as a result. Well, I think one of you told me he hitchhiked here. Is this right? After the war, he hitchhiked from California to Chicago. I'm not. Please don't try this. Those days are gone. Don't even dream of doing that. And he went to a Navy dance, you told me, and it was there that he met Esther. So the Navy was his, I use a Hebrew Yiddish word, shadchan. You know what a shadchan is? A matchmaker. Don't get it wrong, it's not shotgun, it's shadchan. The Navy, not only did the Navy give him an experience for life, a transforming experience, no question about it. But the Navy also gave him his life's partner for 67 years. As he told me, he was in the insurance business, it was his agency. And at one time he had 10 or 15 people working for him. And as you mentioned, he employed people who were disabled, vets and others who were disabled, which is also a wonderful thing. Now, I learned from Brad just now. Brad, you said I had no idea he was anticipating a movement. He was a conservationist. So politically, he was ahead of everyone. In fact, as you said, if there were any budding historians in the family, all you had to do was go to his office. And then you had the history of the previous 50 years in all kinds of documents. I'm sorry, say again? And newspapers as well. You could just find everything there. That car you mentioned, the 1972 cherry red convertible, which he kept in wonderful condition for years, he even had a picture of it hanging up in the place he lived in, finally, in Charlotte, in the Carriage Club. Speaking of Charlotte, when I talked to you and asked you about how, the time he spent there with you, you took him down there after Esther died. Of course, he was just devastated. But he was a very independent person. He was very independent. You asked him many times to come down there, and he wanted to keep, he wanted his independence. But in the end, he relented, and that was a wonderful thing. In the Carriage Club, he was a character. He had a scooter, courtesy of the VA. In fact, he had many things courtesy of the VA, and also courtesy of the fact that he kept on at them, that he made sure that they gave him what was his right and just due. And he would ride around. He would be known. He would ride around on his scooter at the Carriage Club. Everyone knew him, and there was a wonderful parade. There was a celebration of his service and the service of the few other people there who were also veterans. In fact, you mentioned that you were walking with him, and already his mind, he wasn't so clear. And you said to him, "Dad, do you know what today is?" Because you weren't sure that he would even know. And immediately he said, "It's Veterans Day," and he was right, which must have been something wonderful for you. But also, there's some things that, even when the mind is a little confused, that are so important to us that we retain them, even when other things are a little confused. And he's even in a film. There was a movie that was made about the Jewish World War II veterans, a documentary movie which was shown in Charlotte. There was a great celebration, and now it's available on Amazon. You also mentioned to me, and I know that the two of you had, I think, your bar mitzvahs, right, at Kol Emeth, which is my synagogue, a little before my time. I'm sorry. If I'd known, I'd have come there earlier so I could be with you. Please accept my apology. But you were there. Of course, his office, later on he had his office, originally it was on Peterson, but later on it was right there across the street near Jack's Restaurant, of which he was a regular. Jack's Restaurant, I should say, may it rest in peace, because it's no longer there. It was really an icon, a monument in that area with so many characters there, including your dad. He was there all the time. You told me about car trips. You went to so many places, because he loved music, right? He went to the opera, and you had a wonderful car trip to Interlaken, in Michigan, and you have wonderful memories of seeing beautiful performances there. You would drive to New York to see his parents and his sister, to whom he was so close. In fact, he talked to her every day on the phone. Drove to Florida. One day you said that, this is rather nice, it was announced that you were going away for the weekend. But it was a very extended weekend. Let me just tell you how extensive this weekend was. You drove to Montreal, to New York, to Florida, and on the way back you stopped at French Lick, Indiana. This is a time extension. How many weeks was it? 3 weeks. When you came back, the neighbors thought you had an accident because you said you were going away for the weekend. I'm sure some of you know that people, say someone lives here, and they're going to California, and they want to have their car in California, right? So a company will hire someone to drive the car to California. Well, he did that. He drove, this sounds like a movie, he drove a big gold Cadillac from here, right, to California. And who was in the car? Were you all in the, you were in the car as well. So Wasn't that, there's a movie about a Cadillac, I forget what it's called. Seriously, isn't it? What was it called? The Solid Gold Cadillac. There you are, you're in a movie. They traveled, went to France, they visited Craig in Holland. They also went on many cruises. You've been talking about how in this family, the phrase in-law is often not just superfluous, but misleading. And that's with him as well, because he was like a son to Sue's parents. Sue, I know you're there, to your parents, to David, not to Sue, to Esther's parents, I beg your pardon, to Esther's parents, David and Soleil. He was like a son to them. He would fix things for them as well. He could fix anything at all. And of course, you talked about Sue. Sue, you told me yourself that you were there once and someone said, someone asked what your relationship was, and you said, I'm his daughter-in-law, and he said, no, you're my daughter. You're my daughter. And what that meant to you, and what it means to Neil, I saw what it meant to you just to talk about it before. There were dogs, apparently. You had a schnauzer called Skipper. Is that right? You laugh. I don't know if Skipper did anything interesting. You can tell me if he ate. Sorry? Stay in the basement. Did he eat anything? Did he eat up the basement? Was that it? No. Okay. And then later, of course, you had you brought dogs to visit him. You had Missy, right, a cocker spaniel, and Winston, very very small dog, 50 pounds. And he said, "Now this is a real dog." Like this. You told me for some reason that I still don't understand. I know they were married for 67 years, but they made very certain of it because they got married twice. Once at City Hall and then the second time with a rabbi. I mentioned Richard and Ira, who had a wonderful relationship with Saul. He was like a second father to them. You see how these names we use, father-in-law, uncle, this, that, and the other. But sometimes the names are deceptive because the relationship is much closer than that. You get an image, father-in-law, mother-in-law. It's very, very different. The words, they do something in your mind, but when you actually get to know the facts and the relationships, it's much closer. As I said, Richard and Ira visited him several times in Charlotte, and of course you paid a beautiful tribute to Sue. So we're going to have someone else speak now. Richard. I've just mentioned him, and here he is. So you're going to? Any minute now, we're going to hear from Richard. So I will sit down, and Richard will.
Hi there. Hi,
Go ahead.
everybody. I
Hello.
hope you could see me okay. Well, thank you, Rabbi. And I was extremely touched to hear Neil talk. And Neil's a wonderful guy. I first saw Neil 2 years old in his baby eating chair. And at that time, I thought that I never saw anybody with the most beautiful green eyes in my life. And he was the cutest baby I had ever seen in my life. I also, I only met Brad once. I think it was at Jessica's wedding. I was totally impressed with Brad, and it was great to hear his love and his experience and his life with Uncle. And I want to just reminisce a little bit about Uncle Saul, who of course was my mother's brother, and they grew up together in the Bronx in Pelham Parkway. And because we always would visit my grandparents, I got to understand and imagine my mother and my brother growing up in Pelham Parkway. And I guess as the story goes about Grandma and Grandpa, They lived in a neighborhood with other Russian immigrants, and everybody knew Uncle. And Uncle to us was our first real life superhero. So I'll just read a little bit of my thoughts of what I wrote about Uncle. And so I will say that, yes, he was our real life superhero to Ira and myself, my brother Ira. My mother had a great love for her brother. And growing up as children, sure, there was Superman and Mickey Mantle, but to grow up in real life demanded emulation of a different kind. And despite the size of the universe containing billions of galaxies extending unimaginable light years amongst the endless array of uncountable stars, the size of our universe, my brother and I, as young children, extended from only New York and Chicago. That's where Uncle Solly lived now, in Chicago. He went into the Navy, got stationed there, met my Aunt Esther, and the anticipation of Uncle Saul and Aunt Esther driving back to the Bronx, to his childhood home, to see his mother and father was like all the major holidays rolled into one. Everyone felt it in the neighborhood. Everyone knew Aunt Esther and Uncle Solly were driving in from Chicago. Uncle Sol and Aunt Esther, to me, were more real than Ozzie and Harriet or Ward and June Cleaver. When I visited them in Chicago with Ira, we spent 2 summers there. We took the Greyhound bus, and one time we flew on American Airlines. It was our first glimpse of suburban America, and it expanded my horizons. Uncle was like this guy, like the movie heroes. He had a temperament that I guess I subconsciously, as I grew up, would imitate, and his voice I would emulate. And I remember thinking that nothing, neither wind, rain, sleet, or snow, could get him flustered or off-centered, or Aunt Esther teasing could never get him to just do anything more than smile. And occasionally he would say, Esther. But anyway, I guess I was to follow in his footsteps to be a salesperson and an entrepreneur. And I think that I learned from him. And I do want to say that everybody who was ever in his life, I am endlessly impressed. I remember meeting Jeremy at Jessica's wedding for the first time and thinking what a wonderful guy he was. Speaking to Brad, thinking an incredible guy. Neil, Sue, wonderful people. And it's no doubt, and it's obvious that they were influenced by Uncle Saul. I realized he had more patience He had more common sense than anyone I ever knew. He was cool, he was unflappable, so much so that every interaction he had with me growing up, he treated as an important step for me. You could tell how he thought about what he would say to me. And he took every moment like that as being extremely important. He was never flip about it. And he knew that how important it was for a young person's development. He was like a real life movie star hero that says the right thing at the right time, at the right moment, in the right cadence and the right pitch. I remember one time asking my mom if she or uncle ever got into an argument or fight, and she said no. But then she thought about it and said, yeah, once he found my sanitary napkin in the drawer. And I asked if he was teasing you about it, Mom. And then Mom thought about the incident again. And my intuition told me she wanted to recant any hint of an implication that Uncle did anything wrong, because in her eyes, he was the perfect brother. Grandpa and Grandma would literally glow when he was in their presence. I still remember Grandma's face as she spoke about Uncle. And so one life ends and others begin. And through it all, understand and will always remember what Uncle knew and lived, that underneath it all, goodness in one's life holds it all together. Grandpa, Mom, and Uncle knew it well. Be good, and you will never, ever be sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for those lovely words. One last thought. Brad, you said something that was, I think, very significant. You said a lot of things that were significant. There's one I want to pick out. You said that he was teaching you something, and you didn't realize that you were being taught. I want to tell you, that is what a teacher should be. To teach, we're often afraid of learning, as it's overwhelming. We don't know how to do it. If someone can teach you, and you only realize afterwards, oh, I've learned a lesson. That is the most beautiful essence of teaching. Our prayers, we have a prayer if our parents are present, after we eat, when we bench, the Birkat HaMazon, we have a prayer, and we mention our father and our mother. Father, my father, I'm not going to test you, I'll tell you what it is in Hebrew. Avi, right? Avi. Av is a father. Avi. Abba is dad. Avi. We don't just say Avi. We say Avi Mori. My father, my teacher. He was your father. He was your grandfather. He was your uncle. But he was, above all, he was your teacher. Not necessarily by instructing you, by saying, do this, don't do that, although I'm sure he did, but by example. This is the way a life should be led. And that's what we've basically heard. We've heard from all of you. I heard it from you yesterday when we were speaking. I heard it now from all of you speaking, and I know you were speaking for everyone else as well. He's at peace now, and I say of him, Tehei nishmato tzururah b'tzur hachayim. May his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. And to him I say, Saul, B'tzalel ben Ephraim, Lech b'shalom, gain freedom, go in peace, Havalech in Gan Eden, may your repose be in paradise. You will never be forgotten. You'll always be remembered in love by those who knew you and loved you, and those whom you knew and you loved. Amen. I'm going to ask you, if you can, to stand, please. If it's difficult for you to stand, stay seated. You have the ribbon. If you could tear it or get someone else to tear it from the bottom. And Sue, if you are there, I don't know if Sue is wearing a ribbon, but Craig and why don't you come together? Anyone who's wearing a ribbon, come together, and I'm going to say a bracha with you that we say on these occasions. It begins the way a bracha usually begins, Baruch atah Adonai, and there are two extra words at the end. That's fine. So, with me. Baruch Elohim Dayan Ha'emet, which means blessed be the true judge. That's what we say when we suffer a loss. You can go back to your seats, but please remain standing. El Malei Rachamim, Shalchein Mamromim, Ometzei Menochanei Chona, Tachat Kanefei Ashina, V'malot Kedoshim Otorim Kezorak Yemasirim, Et Nishmat B'tzalel Ben Ephraim Ve'Ethel Shalach Li'olamo V'avor, Shanach Nodin Nitztag V'Raskarat Nishmato, Began Eden, Tehei Menuchato, Lachein Bad Rachamim, Yastirei V'Seidik Nach Le'olamim, Yitzra V'Yitzrachem Et Nishmato, Adonai Unachalato, V'Yanuach B'Shalom, Al Mishkavo, V'Nomar, Amen. Passion of God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament, unto the soul of Saul Schreiber, who has entered eternity, and in whose memory we offer charity. May his repose be in paradise. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
This does conclude the service here at the chapel. The interment will take place at Sunset Memorial Lawn Cemetery. That's 3100 Shermer Road in Northbrook. The procession will be forming in the parking lot. If you're going, please keep in mind a few safety features while in the procession. Keep your bright headlights on at all times. Put your emergency blinkers on. Attach the orange funeral sticker to the passenger portion of your front windshield. And we'll attach a flag to the roof of your car. And please stay as close as safety permits to the car in front of you. The following people have been selected to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, if you please step forward. Bradley Schreiber, Jeremy Schreiber, Dahlia Schreiber, Virgil Schreiber, Solel Schreiber, and Aaron Weiss. At this time, I would ask that everyone please rise as the family and the rabbi are escorted from the chapel. Pallbearers, you're going to follow behind 2 by 2 while we're through the doors. Watch out, Boris. One other one. Boris.